everybody, and welcome to this special edition of Eco Africa in Bonn, Germany.
Yes, indeed. We came for the Global Media Forum and thought we should do a piece from Europe for a change. And now we're here.
Great times.
Let's see who gets there first.
I'm going to beat you. So how can we get from point A to B in an environmentally friendly way? That's the focus of the show. And I'm so excited to be able to present with my co-host, NT.
Yes, indeed, Z. It's a pleasure to be here, to be back in Bonn for this special edition of Eco Africa, co-produced by Channels TV in Nigeria, Deutsche Welle in Germany, and Kwese TV in South Africa. But hold on there. We have a lineup for you coming up just now. We will see how Bonn is on its way to becoming a role model for eco-friendly transportation.
Find out the role traditional wooden scooters play in the DRC.
And check out what may be the next big thing in urban mobility: electric skateboards.
As you can see, there are all sorts of fairly simple modes of transportation, like the skateboard, for example. It's not only just fun, but it's a quick way to get across town.
Yeah, the skateboards are good. They're cool indeed. But then a startup decided to remodel it, give it an electric motor. And if you ask me, e-skateboards, exciting. But added to that, the fact that the German government recently decided to allow e-vehicles to go on the bike paths. So we went on a ride in the German capital on one of this.
And you know what? Talking about modes of transportation, I think it's time for us to change our way.
I do agree.
Yeah, let's go. Oh, this is nice, huh? I've never been on one of these. Have you been on one?
No.
This is interesting.
Fun time.
Yes, let's do this.
Tired of battling your way through city traffic on your bike or in a car? With this skateboard, you'll get where you want to go just as fast, emissions-free and swiftly skirting any obstacles that may pop up along the way. It's Tony Gunter's idea. His startup developed an electric drive for skateboards. It can be mounted on practically any board of any size. Once electrified, the skateboard has a 15-kilometer range and can roll along at up to 40 kilometers an hour. It can also climb grades of up to 15%. The rider accelerates and brakes with a handheld remote. When braking, the board feeds energy back into the system. When it's empty, the rechargeable battery can be swapped out quickly and easily. The electric drive costs around 700 euros, board not included. At some point, the team also wants to set up a rental scheme.
For us, sustainability doesn't just mean sustainability in terms of transport. For us, it's key to be able to say we produce in Germany and know every link in our supply chain. We don't send parts halfway around the world. We produce here and ship from here, and that reduces our CO2 emissions.
But many cities in Germany are wary about allowing motorized skateboards out on the streets. There are still big questions about where they'll be permitted and how fast they can go.
And how about you? If you're also doing your bit, tell us about it. Visit our website or send us a tweet. #DoingYourBit. We share your stories.
What a great view far above all the traffic. You know, Bonn, like every other city around the world, gets busy during the rush hour.
Indeed.
So, but what would it take? What do you think it would take to get people to begin to think about alternative means of transport in order to reduce the carbon emissions and all that? Sometimes it just comes down to a simple idea.
Indeed, NT, and they are so full of ideas here. Now, the city is very proactive when it comes to minimizing carbon dioxide emissions, so maybe it won't take long before it is cool down here as it is up there.
Indeed.
Philipp Müller is a student in Bonn. He's taking advantage of a new bike-sharing service with around 900 bicycles across the city. After registering, Philipp can pick up a bike wherever he finds one and leave it wherever he wants.
I downloaded the app a few months ago, and since then I've used the service a lot. At first because my own bike was broken, but then I was happy to switch to the rentals. If I travel the same distance as a friend does in his car, I usually get there faster.
That's because, like in many cities in Germany, traffic often clogs the streets of the former capital. Every day, around 140,000 people commute to or from Bonn to work. The cars pollute the air and compete for space with other forms of transport. To support cyclists, Bonn University offers do-it-yourself bike repair workshops. Bike mechanics help you fix your two-wheeler yourself.
I can fix a flat in 10 minutes with a patch that costs a couple of euros, and then I can set off again straight away. If I left it down in the basement for 2 months, I'd have to take the bus, or a car if I had one. This way it's better. You're more self-sufficient.
Helmut Wiesner from the Municipal Planning Department doesn't believe additional lanes will help Bonn's traffic problem. He wants to add cable cars to the public transport system, running above pedestrians and other earthbound traffic.
We have to offer alternatives that don't depend on the streets, like a cable car system, which is independent of conditions down on the ground and can help relieve congestion.
The cable car project is still in the planning stage. The 2-kilometre route would cross the Rhine and connect 2 train stations and travel hubs. Based on data from other cities, the cars should be able to transport up to 8,000 passengers an hour. And building the line would probably only cost around 10% of what it would cost to build an equivalent subway line.
I can cover short distances in a straight line and link up existing railway lines. And I can build the system relatively cheaply and very quickly.
Just a few kilometres down the Rhine in Cologne, a renewable energy provider has launched Donkey, an electric cargo bike rental service. It's another way to replace cars for short trips. Nicole Klaski owns a small grocery shop. She has to transport things every day.
It's pretty cool that we can take care of transport between our store and warehouse this way, especially for our catering service. It fits perfectly with our aim of being environmentally neutral. By using a cargo bike, we can do things in a CO2 neutral way.
The bikes run on green electricity. They can carry up to 100 kilograms for a distance of 75 kilometers. They're available on demand at 50 stations across the city via the Donkey app. Klaski says it's a very useful service.
It allows us to save costs and space. We don't need to have a car. With this system, you can be much more spontaneous and mobile. I can park right here and load up for my store.
Donkey has 60 bicycles and is planning to grow its fleet. The project may be innovative, but it isn't yet making a profit. The switch to sustainable mobility remains a major challenge for Bonn, Cologne, and for other cities across Germany.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right?
Let's go meet Mr.
Hauschild. Okay.
So Z,
Yes?
you know, we keep talking about mobility all over. Now we're going to meet the head of mobility technology at BMW, Mr. Hauschild. Nice to meet you.
Hi, welcome. Yeah.
It's good to have you here. But we're talking mobility here, so just tell us real quick, how is it that sustainable mobility has become like the talk of the town?
Well, you know, I mean, mobility is something that really impacts every one of us, right? And it's a good topic to talk about because at the end of the day, it's something many people want, and there's too little of, right? Space and clean air. And, you know, it's not only about the environment, but, you know, the environment is something that is very important to us, and it's everyone's job kind of to, you know, go forward and save resources.
I do like the fact that you mentioned the environment. So, I mean, obviously my second question is going to be about that. Why do you think that the environment always tops the list when it comes to mobility issues?
Well, you know, it's about resources, right? And clean air is just one resource that it's absolutely important, just as space and everything else we're talking about, that we find solutions, that we use these resources in a very efficient way, just as much as we need.
Now, talking about what we need, what kind of incentives do you give to people so that they can change their old ways to the new ways?
Well, you touch a really important topic. It's the people, right? So next to all of the technology that we have and the new solutions that you might be coming up, it's about people and how they can change their way of looking at mobility. And one of the things that you obviously need to do is educate them about how mobility can work in the future, and also at the same time let them experience how new mobility works and how it then can even improve their lives.
And you know, we've been talking a lot about mobility here in Germany and in Europe too, but what about Africa? What's the situation over there, NT?
Well, the thing is, it's basically the big cities that actually need to look at these solutions. They need more integration. And some of these things are beginning to bear fruit. Let's go have a look at that.
For a long time, these rangers had to make do with single-gear bikes. Now they have e-bikes. The small electric motors give them an extra boost, which allows them to cover more ground in their quest to protect wildlife from poachers in Namibia's Salambara Conservancy. The bikes are actually easier to maneuver around in the park than trucks and jeeps. Urban areas have other mobility issues. Gridlock clogs the roads from dawn till dusk in cities like Nigeria's Lagos. But there are ways to reduce the endless stream of toxic exhaust. Hybrid cars contribute far less to air pollution. Entrepreneur Abebole Odenike bought one second-hand. Hybrids run on a combination of petrol and battery power. When the driver presses the brake in stop-and-go traffic, the motor acts as a generator to charge the electric battery. As a result, hybrids consume 25% less fuel. Traffic jams are also a major problem in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. One method of alleviating the problem is digital. Matatu Route is a smart traffic app. Locals can share information regarding road accidents and congestions. Users can check the app, Twitter feeds, or a Google map to see which areas to avoid. The app is financed through advertising, so it's free of charge for users. Matatu Route has already been downloaded over 3 million times. Traffic jams waste fuel, time, and slow productivity, so keeping the flow of vehicles moving benefits the economy and the environment. But what about traffic solutions that run on 100% renewable sources? Some vehicles are already on the road in Sharkville, a coastal city in Ivory Coast. Solar power three-wheel taxis use technology from China. The rooftop panel provides enough energy to cover 30 kilometers. Beyond that, the taxis run on batteries that have been charged with solar energy. These eco-friendly taxis also charge less than conventional cabs, good for the people in Sharkville and the climate.
Now, it just looks like things are moving along quite nicely in Africa. No pun intended here.
Very funny, but of course, the solutions that are needed in Africa are very different from the ones here in Europe. What are the major differences, do you think?
Well, for one, I think it's important just to understand that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And solutions that work in Europe in the one city may not work in another city, may also not work in a different country. So it's really important to understand the solutions that will work in a certain country and understand how to implement them.
Talking about solutions that work in one place, what would you say are the biggest challenges in the developing world? And now this is not just Africa, in Africa for instance. What do you say are the major challenges to sustainable mobility?
I think one of the things that you should be aware of is that you need to start from the basics. So one of the things that you need to focus on is really fixing the basics, making public transport, for instance, something that works for everyone. And once that happens, you can evolve into new mobility concepts and add car sharing, ride sharing, all the new mobility concepts to that to further strengthen mobility and drive mobility even further.
Now, how can you persuade people in countries that sustainable mobility can actually improve their lives?
Well, I think one of the things is in educating people is making them understand how playing with the environment is just part of the bigger picture. I think one of the important things is for everyone to understand is that how things work together and how they contribute to new mobility and using resources more efficiently than they have been before.
Well, you've talked about sustainability, resources and all of that, but how would companies like your company, BMW for instance, help to shape sustainable mobility in such markets where they're more concerned about infrastructure and all that?
You know, BMW is a really big company with lots of engineers, and all of our engineers tend to be really obsessed with finding solutions and building technology around solving problems. And that's something we can put into the context of mobility and try to find new solutions to bring mobility forward on the one side. And on the other side, if you look at a big company that has also focused very strongly on the economics, that's also one of the really big impacts that will be on mobility, because it's basically exactly the same thing. Just think about it. It's all about using resources very efficiently and getting the most out of little resources. And that's the same for mobility.
Great. You know, I like the fact that your face lights up when you talk about BMW, but thank you so much for coming through and talking to us. Now, but before you go, I'd like to ask you, have you heard of a chukudu?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's a special kind of scooter.
Yeah,
Interesting, right?
It's a special kind of scooter that's used in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes, and a lot of people depend on them. It might just be the ride of the future. Let's check it out.
They are a familiar sight in Goma. Chukudus, cargo-carrying scooters made in DR Congo. Durable wood and patient craftsmanship are what it takes to make them. Sebastian Pascal learned how from his father. He charges $100 for a chukudu. It's pretty hard work. The most difficult part is whittling everything down so that the parts fit together. Almost all the parts come from the region. Pascal and his colleagues can spend up to 3 days making sure everything fits. Only then is the chukudu ready to roll. Chukudus transport not only people, but staggering loads of just about anything. In downtown Goma, a statue has been erected in honor of this valued means of transportation. We didn't always have things like motorcycles, but we had the chukudu to help us transport goods. It was invented here in Goma. That's why this statue is here. This chukudu reflects Goma's image. It symbolizes our city, and that makes us happy.
It shows how they have to work so hard just to end their life here in Goma.
Meanwhile, Sebastian Pascal has gone home to his family. His sister is proud of the hard-working chukudu maker. She says we have enough to eat and to send the kids to school. Pascal is convinced that hard working is the only way forward in crisis-ridden eastern DR Congo. And so he's on the road again, hauling new wood for another chukudu.
That's the way to go, a vehicle that is easy to repair yourself. Now, most innovations are a little too complex for that, but who knows what may happen in the future. Here in Bonn, some buses are already using e-motors, and the electric market vehicle is growing exponentially, but not only in Germany. Experts say that in 2040, 35% of the new global car sales will be electric.
Indeed. In Africa, for instance, there are plans to promote 2, 3 and 4-wheelers through the UN Environment Program in 10 African countries, including Ghana. Now, in Ghana right now, a startup is already doing a test of a compact electric pickup van designed to meet the vehicular needs of African countries. We met some of the founders.
The first prototype of the Acar was presented at a ceremony in Ghana 2 years ago. The king of the Ashanti people received the German developers of the electrically powered truck. Then the pickup was put through its paces to see if it's robust enough to cope with the challenges of Ghana's roads. There are now 4 prototypes of the Acar. It's expected to launch first in Germany and other European countries before it's introduced in African countries, including Ghana, Kenya, South Africa and Namibia. The Acar is made up mainly of simple sheet metal parts. It has just 600 components, excluding screws and rivets. It's a vehicle reduced to the very bare essentials.
Of course, basic parts such as the battery, the electric engine and so on need to be delivered, but the elements made of steel and metal can be manufactured locally. The point is that you don't need a lot of know-how to assemble it, and it will be easy to get the hang of the production process.
That's being put to the test at the production facility of Aform Motors. How can the individual steps be optimized so that mechanics around the world can easily assemble the vehicle?
We're working on the body of the car. We're concentrating on the assembly of the suspension, the chassis and the wheels. We're making a note of what you need to do when, how many people you need in the team, and which steps require more than one person.
The centerpiece of the Acar is the battery. In the prototype, it's exposed, but a cover can be ordered if required. The idea was born 6 years ago. The designers were still at university, studying automotive and aerospace technology, when they first came up with the idea of an electric car custom designed for African roads, as an alternative to diesel and gasoline vehicles. The battery can be charged in 6 hours at a standard 230-volt socket.
The biggest obstacle to introducing an e-vehicle in Africa is the limited availability of electricity. From the outset, we factored in the energy supply. Experience has shown us that even if there's access to a power grid, the supply is unstable. For that reason, we collaborate with primary suppliers of regenerative energies, such as solar and hydropower.
The plan is to mount solar modules on the roof.
From the start, we were looking at the African market, where mobility is not a luxury. People and goods need to get from A to B. It's a basic need. I worked in an orphanage in Africa when I was a student. My neighbor had a pineapple plantation. He'd harvest the fruit on the farm, but he had no way of taking it to market and selling it, so he had no income.
Series production is set to launch in southern Germany in early 2020. The first models to come off the production line will be introduced in Europe. Around a year later, the Acar will be launched in Africa. Here in Ghana, it'll cost the equivalent of 10,000 euros, a lot cheaper than a used car from Europe or the US.
we've come to the end of this special edition of Eco Africa here in Bonn. I hope that you did enjoy the show and you've learned a bit about how to get from A to B in an eco-friendly way. But for right now, it's goodbye from us.
Yes, it was a pleasure being with you here in Bonn at the Global Media Forum. And do join us again next week when we will be back in Africa. It's okay. But for now, goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen. We're going to explore the rest of Bonn.
Yes.
Bye.
Ciao.